all heard stories, and maybe we've even had the experience about near-death experiences. And in those, there's kind of a universal theme where someone had a choice to walk towards the light, and their experiences are very, very similar in the way they describe it. They had this overwhelming sense of love, compassion, grace, peace, something else, entirely maybe, but they described it as wonderful. And that's a word we're going to hear again in a little while. But because we've heard these stories, we know they all chose to come back. A lot of people don't choose to come back, but we don't hear those stories.
Can't imagine why.
Unless we go to psychic mediums or channels.
And Lilydale. Yeah.
So they chose to return to this life. And there are a lot of similarities in why they choose to come back. Typically, they could choose to come back for someone else. They have a commitment. A lot of times they're parents. Sometimes they're not. They're children who want to come back to help their parents. But a lot of times it's a commitment to family members. It's a sense of service. But in every case, they had a will to live. And so they did. The title of the talk today is The Will to Live. There was an outline submitted by Reverend Maggie Buck from Foothill Center for Spiritual Living in Auburn. It's one of the closest ones I've seen. The December topic is happiness and fulfillment. Last week I kind of had an experience myself where I was just kind of funky. Feeling like I wasn't going to get everything done, and the weather was not perfect, and for me it's really unusual to be in that funk. And I was kind of wondering, how do I get out of my funk? And then I remembered something really important. It's good to be a Stevie. Somebody reminded me of that. It was actually Reverend Rebecca. Once I got back to just that thought, everything changed. Everything seemed better. And it really was that simple. I was then able to recognize and choose joy. Now, along that theme, you've often heard me say, the whole universe conspires for my good. This is the Science of Mind passage, maybe where I got that. I don't remember. The science of mind conspires with us because it has led us back through the dim and dark cavern of our own thinking to the original source of our being, which it has hesitated to call God, but which it knows is a power greater than we are. And that's from Living the Science of Mind. Another page in Living the Science of Mind is a lot simpler. The will to live and to be happy is necessary to our physical well-being. Now, to me, and this was, of course, last night's download in addition to what I'd already written, it's not just the will to live, it's the will to live well. The will to live greatly. A lot of us have the will to live, but we don't allow it to manifest all that it can be, all that we should and can experience in our lives. So I want you to, when I say the will to live, I want you to think the will to live well. But sometimes it's just the will to live. There's a book and movie, Tuesdays with Moyer. I'm sure a lot of you have read it, by Mitch Schwartz, and he describes the will to live. Mitch interviews Moyer on issues of living and dying. And there were so many lessons in that book that were powerful and relevant. Here are some of the inspirational points about how to live according to Moyer. Give out love and let love come in. Sometimes we're better giving it out than we are allowing it to come in. Live in a fully conscious, compassionate, loving way. Death ends a life. Death doesn't end the relationship. All the love you created is still there. Allow it to be in your consciousness. Don't shut it off because of death. Death didn't end the love. It didn't end the relationship. Devote yourself to loving others. Devote yourself to the community around you. That's our spiritual community, but also the larger community. If you live by these points, you will be a powerful point of light in your community, whatever that is. Devote yourself to creating something that gives you purpose and meaning. Those were the thoughts that Moyer gave to Mitch Schwartz. Sometimes we need reminders. We all know this stuff. We get reminders. We're remembering. And that's what it is. In this teaching, we often say thoughts are things. So we know our thoughts have power. We haven't discovered for ourselves how much power, how to use it. But I would hope that you understand there is a power. You can use it. And when you use it properly, it's good for you and everyone else. Here's how Maya Angelou describes applying our thoughts. I've learned that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did. But people will never forget how you made them feel. Sometimes when we're not cautious with our words, we can hurt people without ever knowing it. Sometimes when we are loving, kind, compassionate, we can help people in ways that we'll never know. Do you remember when you were young? Of course, you're all young. But when we were starting out this journey that we call life, you were so into discovery of new things, new ways to experience life. Anything that excited you was new and wonderful. We learned to spread our wings and show what it looks like for God to uniquely express itself as each and every person's unique life. And like the conspiracy theory that I hold, everything is here to help us. Life doesn't inconvenience us, it assists us. The will to live well depends on our rediscovery of who we came here to be, what we wanted to experience, how we wish to express ourselves. To remember that which created us lives within us always and forever. At the Big Bang, that's when we were created. We will go out with a big collapse in 20 quadrillion years. We were part of the beginning. We are part of everything. We are infinite. We are now. Now, I'm not alone, as someone who chooses joy as my daily experience. And I'll quote from another book of two gentlemen, actually three gentlemen, we're pretty well known for living joyous lives. In the Book of Joy, Lasting Happiness in a Changing World by the Dalai Lama, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and Douglas Abrams, which I'm sorry, I don't know anything about Douglas Abrams, I found this. There's a description of the book itself. The book talks about life and what supports us in living fully. And it says, so much depends on where we put our attention. On our own suffering or that of others, or on our own perceived separation or our invisible connection. In the book, they laid out what they described as the central pillars of joy. Here's the first one. Our ability to reframe our situation more positively. And I'm going to go through these in more detail. Second, our ability to experience gratitude. Third, our choice to be kind and generous. Now let's look at those one at a time. First, we have an ability to reframe our situation more positively. And first I want to say that is the strength of this teaching. Science of mind is how to frame our own thinking positively, affirmatively. We have an ability to change the way we think, the way we look at things, and the way we experience life. If you get nothing else from this teaching, know that you have that ability to change your thinking. We can choose how to respond to any situation. And I want to talk about a woman who was important to the development of new thought. And it wasn't a woman I'd heard of before about 2 weeks ago. Her name was Genevieve Barrand. Anybody know that name? She was so inspired by the talks, the lectures, and the writings of Judge Thomas Troward, who we do know, that she requested a meeting. Now she was in, I believe, France. He was in England or Scotland. She sent him a written request to meet with him. He didn't respond. Her response was classic. I decline to be discouraged. I decline to be discouraged. Ms. Barrand, I'm not sure her marital status, she personally went on to expand an entire aspect of New Thought. She developed, created, and perfected the concept of visualization. One of her more famous students, not direct students, but someone who follows her teachings, is Mary Morrissey. Ms. Barron knew how to use visualization of what she wanted and expected in an entirely new way. Her ideas also were very heavily influential in the book and the movie The Secret. I will just elaborate a little bit. She declined to be discouraged. Judge Troward never responded. She decided, well, he hasn't met me yet. She created a budget to go stay in Scotland long enough to meet Judge Troward. She said, I think I need $20,000 for her travel. Every day, she visualized counting out 20 $1,000 bills. Took her 6 weeks. 6 weeks she had $20,000. Now that had to be around 1900. $20,000. But she created visualization. And she declined to be discouraged. That was important.
Powerful.
Here's another example how you can respond to any situation. Give in to your fear. Now, of course, you know that I'm going to have a different definition of fear, right? There's two definitions of fear. Forget everything and run. Or face everything and rise. For me, I'll say face everything and rock. Give in to your fear. Face it. Rock it. Okay, back to the second pillar of joy. We have the ability to express gratitude. And I want to give you a quote from Henri Nouwen. Joy does not simply happen to us. We have to choose joy and keep choosing it every day. I can't think of anything that brings me back to my happy place quicker than feeling gratitude. When you focus on gratitude, you literally experience a major energy shift. Rumi describes it this way. When you do things from your soul, you feel a river moving in you, a joy. That's Rumi. We can even feel gratitude for our sorrow. Why? Because, Rumi has another quote, sorrow prepares you for joy. It violently sweeps everything out of your house so that new joy can find space to enter. It shakes the yellow leaves from the bough of your heart so that fresh green leaves can grow in their place. It pulls the rotten roots so that new roots hidden beneath have room to grow. Whatever sorrow shakes from your heart, far better things will take their place. You have to admit, Rumi's writings have stuck around a long time. A lot of other teachers' writings have come and gone, faded away. But his ability to speak truth that resonates in all of us may last forever. Third point from the Bishop and the Dalai Lama's Pillars of Joy. It is always our choice to be kind and generous. And I want to say, you already know this. For each one of you here has shown me kindness and generosity. And for that, I say thank you. And I know you're kind and generous people with others as well. Now, before we leave the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Tutu, I want to add a few more of their quotes. The Dalai Lama, of course, had to flee his home country. And he stated, I am fortunate to be alive. I have a precious human life. I am not going to waste it. Now, Archbishop's most frequently used word in his conversations, in his lectures, in his talks, wonderful. I pointed out wonderful early on in this discussion. He's telling us we should always find the wonder, see the wonder, the surprise, the possibility in each and every experience and each encounter. That's the core aspect of joy. Now, individually, these two men are quite humorous. When you put them together, it's like Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis. They are hilarious. They're both humble men, but they have an ability to use humor and irreverence interchangeably. In their book, the bishop describes his experience speaking at funerals for people who died protesting apartheid. they died because the police shot and killed them. At the funeral, those same police are standing around the perimeter. That could be a little tense. So at the funeral, the bishop told his version of the creation story. He said, God created men out of lumps of clay, and he put them into a kiln to dry. Well, he forgot about the first batch and burned them, so they became the black race. Then he overreacted on the second batch, and he took them too early. They weren't quite done, and they became the white race. Then the bishop, being the bishop, laughed uproariously. He loves his own jokes, a trait I find attractive. And the crowd relaxed, and the police relaxed. All of them had the will to live, and the will to live well, differently. All of them wanted their lives to change, and apartheid ended. Not at the funerals, but they all had a different vision and will to live in a new way. It would have been so easy for the bishop to hate the police, or for the Dalai Lama to hate the Chinese. But that's not who they are. It's not what they stand for. And it's certainly not what they teach us. It's not what Dr. Holmes teaches us. In The Science of Mind, he says, it takes no energy to love. It is hate that is destructive. It doesn't take mental or physical energy to be happy. But unhappiness and morbidity consume so much energy that it devitalizes us mentally and physically. It doesn't take mental or physical energy to build up hope. It's despair that blocks us. All it takes is faith.
Who said that?
Hmm?
Who said that?
Dr. Holmes in our Science of Mind textbook. So don't ignore the power of humor or joy or your smile. Sometimes your joy is the source of your smile, but sometimes your smile can be the source of your joy. And that was from the Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh. And I don't know, I apologize to him wherever he is for the pronunciation of his name. But isn't that exactly what we mean when we say fake it till you make it?
Yep.
It works. If you can smile when you least feel like it, your brain responds in a manner as if you were indeed happy or amused. I often amuse myself. Your brain responds to you more than it responds to anybody else, but it responds to you, not the other way around. You don't respond to your brain. Your brain's just an organ. That's not who and what you are. We know that we respond to how other people feel. It's an energetic thing. When your smile brings joy to others, even if you fake it, it also sends that joy back to you because it's an energetic flow. Because you shared that positive expression of a smile with someone else. Now, each of us has navigated through many crossroads in this life. Some choices were more difficult than others. For every one of those choices, we operated through free will. And sometimes, even though we believe in an all-powerful, all-knowing God, seems like life isn't fair. sometimes we really hurt. Sometimes it's the people we love the most who hurt us. It doesn't seem like we have much of a choice in that aspect of our life. The one choice we have is how to respond. If anyone saw the president's funeral this week, Senator Alan Simpson from Wyoming gave a beautiful, moving talk. It wasn't the formal eulogy. But he said something that was on CBS this morning that he learned from his mother. Hate destroys the vessel in which it is carried. Haven't heard it expressed quite like that. I always talk about the 5-pound sack of rotten potatoes we're carrying around in our gut. But we have the choice of how to respond to hate, anger, all those things. We can choose to say, today I am grateful I am alive. I love life. My life is rich and full of wonder. Every day I thank God that I'm a Stevie. Because it's good to be a Stevie. Feel free to substitute your own name in there, or anyone else's. The truth is, we each have free will, and we use free will to live. How we choose to live is also part of that free will. I believe that's the reason for each of us being here in this plane of reality. It's up to us to discover our own divine, magnificent self. Or not. Sometimes that's a hard road to walk. But it's always a good road to walk. We have the choice. In this thing called you, another book by Dr. Holmes, know that spirit is right where you are. It is the very essence of your being. It is the center, as well as the circumference of your life. That's from the thing called you. My wish for each of you is that we make the choice to wake up, to remember our own divine, magnificent self as the beloved place where God shows up in our lives. Namaste.
Namaste.